Well, I just want to say thank you for everyone to take time out of your busy day today and jump on our 30-minute webinar. We're going to cover a lot of information real fast. Today's title is Winning the Web: How SEO and AEO Help Home Service Pros Dominate Local Search. I'm Jonathan Watkins, and I'm co-founder of JBX Strategies. We specialize in helping contractors like you, which are landscapers, painters, electricians, and really any home service business get more qualified leads by showing up where customers are actually searching. In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you how to make the rest of 2025 your most visible yet. We're going to show you how to win. All right, a couple of housekeeping items. Like I mentioned earlier, this is being recorded and we'll send this out to the folks that jumped on. So thank you again for jumping on. And then if you could mute yourself until the Q&A, that'll be at the very end. We'll have probably 5 or 6 minutes to go over any questions that you might have. And then again, everyone attending this webinar will get our marketing checklist, and that's packed, and that'll be for free. And that's packed full of things that you can do to implement right away to increase your SEO and increase your visibility the last half of the year. So let's finish the second quarter and excuse me, the third quarter and fourth quarter strong. So again, thank you for joining, and we'll get started. All right, what we want to do here is, this is not necessarily housekeeping, but we want to cover a couple of definitions for those of you that are on this call that are maybe unsure of what SEO is and AEO. The term SEO has been around for a very long time, and that is basically what we call search engine optimization. And the second definition that we'll talk about in a second is AEO, and that's answer engine optimization. So again, I'm not a big fan of reading PowerPoints. Obviously, you can read the slides yourself, but I do want to touch base on what SEO is, or what we call search engine optimization. And that really is the process of improving your website's visibility in search engine results. Primarily Google, right? People go to Google and they'll search for things, but it's by optimizing the content, structure, and the backlinks. The goal is to attract more qualified organic traffic that converts into leads and sales. And the big word there is conversion. And we can talk a little bit about that later, but we want people to convert into customers. All right, AEO, again, answer engine optimization. And this is relatively new since AI came out. And AEO is really the evolution of SEO for a world dominated by AI. Everyone's heard of ChatGPT and Grok and things like that. And it's really about voice search instead of focusing on only ranking pages. AEO ensures your business is positioned to provide direct, structured answers to queries made through platforms like Google's AI overviews, ChatGPT, Siri, Alexa, Grok, Gemini, so on and so forth. All right, so thank you. We get those definitions out of the way, and we can get this Webby started. Why you're invisible and losing business. Let's start with the brutal truth. If you're not showing up on the first page of Google or in the map pack, you're invisible to the people who are ready to buy. Did you know over 70% of clicks never go past the first page? And if someone says, "Hey Siri, find a plumber near me," are you the one that shows up? If not, you're losing leads every single day. But the good news is this is very, very fixable. And at most of these slides, we've got an action step. When we sent out the invites, we want to make sure that you guys on this call get some actionable takeaways that you can implement in your business right away. And the action step for this is, Google your top 3 services right now. Take just a second to do that. Are you showing up? If not, you have a visibility gap. Okay, so just what are the top 3 services? Write those down and Google those and see if you're showing up. It's as easy as that. And if you're not, we're going to give you things that'll help you show up through the course of this short webinar. The new local search formula. Here's the winning formula we use at JBX. And it's real simple. It's three things. It's be visible, be trusted, and be the answer. Visibility comes from SEO or search engine optimization. Trust is built through reviews and content. And when I mean reviews, I'm primarily talking about Facebook reviews or Google reviews. And we'll get more into the content piece. And being the answer is what AEO is all about. Getting your business picked by voice assistants and smart search features. When you do these three things right, you can really dominate your market. And the action step that I want you to take a look at, and you can do it after this call, is, if you don't have a Google business profile, claim and optimize that. Do that today. Make sure you're adding photos. Make sure you've got the right categories on there. Make sure you've got the right services on there. Make sure your hours are accurate. Make sure that you're closed on the 4th of July. Google will reward all that. If you spend some time in your Google business profile, Google really will reward that from a traffic standpoint. And again, if you need any help on setting some of these things up, we can certainly help you do that. All right, fast SEO wins for 2025. Let's make SEO simple. Okay, first, every service you offer should have its own page. So if you've got 4 or 5 core services, make sure that you've got it has its own page on your website. And the same goes for every major city. If you've got offices, we'll take a landscaping company that may have the corporate office in St. Paul, but then you've got an office in Shakopee, Minnesota. You've got an office in Minneapolis. You've got one in New Prague, different cities. Have a page for every city. And, second, use the same words your customers use. If they Google landscape lighting in Minneapolis, don't title your pages or in the banner page, don't title that, innovative hardscape solutions. And third, speed. And we'll get into this in a bit. If your site loads slow, especially on mobile, because most people are searching on mobile, mobile and desktop are very important. But if they're searching, most people are searching on mobile. But if your site is slow, Google's going to bury it, and just people are not going to be able to find you. These three things alone can really jumpstart your rankings. And the action step here, and I'll define this for you so you've got a good idea what you're looking at. The action step here is, Google's pagespeed.web.dev. And again, Yarush can throw this in chat for anyone here. Thank you, Yarush. Google's pagespeed.web. pagespeed.web.dev. Wow, what a mouthful there. And fix any red flags. And just to give you an idea, page speed is how fast your website moves, right? And goes between pages. When you do that and you go to the pagespeed.web, mobile, anything above 70 is really pretty good. And then on your desktop, you'll see a number. If that is in the 90s, that's really good. And again, Google ranks anywhere from, I believe it's 0 up to 100, and you want to be really close to 100 if you can. If not, if your score is not where it needs to be, Google will give you some suggestions on how to improve that. And it may be as simple as, you maybe have a inexpensive web hosting company that you're paying, $5 a month. And with web hosting, you get what you pay for. So if you're in that $50, $60, $80 a month, that's going to be pretty reasonable. A lot of times that'll come with a lot of changes. And not to go off the rails here, but if you're continually updating your website and changing the content and changing the keywords, that's a big thing here too. And again, that's not really about page speed, but that's something I thought I would throw in there. And a lot of companies will give you 30 to 45 minutes of free website changes. And again, Google will reward that. So thank you. All right, as we continue, optimize for voice and smart search. Okay, and voice is when you just, you pick up your phone and you talk to Siri. AEO or answer engine optimization is where things are headed. Everyone's heard of AI. We hear about it every day. And we're just talking about showing up and the people also ask box. So we're going to show you what we mean by that and give you an example in just a second. And that includes, featured snippets and voice search results. To win here, you really need to write content that answers real questions in plain English. And structure your website pages with headings, FAQs, and clear answers. Really start to think and change your paradigm on, think how your customer is going to think, not how you will think. Try to get outside. Stephen Covey always talked about getting outside your paradigm. And I think that's super important. If you can start thinking like your customer and creating content, Google rewards you for doing that. And I'm going to have Sophie show you an example of what we're talking about as far as the people also ask section. So she'll share her screen here in just a second. All right. When you Google something, what to look for in a landscaping company, and Sophie's going to scroll down here. AI or Gemini is going to usually try to give you an answer first because they, again, want to provide a really good customer experience. And as Sophie scrolls down here, it'll then say, give you, some things to keep in mind when you're searching for a professional landscaping company. And if you look, this is great here. Avon Landscaping shows up, right? So if you remember what we searched for, what to look for in a landscaping company. Well, Avon Landscaping put a blog out there for 5 tips for choosing the right landscaping company. And I don't know if we screw things up, but we could certainly have, Sophie click on that and it'll bring you to their blog. And that is what we want to do. We want to create content that'll get people to go to your blog and check it out. So then this could certainly turn into a conversion if it's the right area, right? And you could fill out a form. They, as a customer, they could fill out a form fill, and that would go to someone in their organization that could reach out primarily in sales and see if they had any questions, right? And there's software that we can put on to find out who's going to your website and things like that. But that's for another webinar. So thanks for showing that. So if you want to go back to that page, we'll scroll down and we'll show the people also ask section. This is really important. So if you look at this people also ask section, do that for your own company, right? Talk about budget and pricing, find out what services they offer. You can look at that. That's what people are searching for. So you can create content no matter what industry in. Doesn't necessarily have to be home service businesses. You could be a dental office. And what are people looking for in a dental office? And Google gives you some kind of hints on what people are searching for. So you can create that content around that. And then as you go lower, and we're going to do another webinar on LSA, PPC, map listings, and organic. But my point for this slide is Google will reward you for creating blogs that answer people's questions. And then I wanted you to check out that people also ask section, and you can start thinking about content that answers people's questions. So thanks for showing that, Sophie. And if you wanted to go back to slide 7, we'll show them the next action step. All right. The action step here is create an FAQ section on every service page that you have. How do I do X? What do I look for in X? Ask those style of questions. And again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we're always trying to design content, that isn't 100% written for Google. It has to resonate and be readable, as we talked about earlier. And it has to be clear and have some clarity in it, but you do want to write it towards Google. So start thinking about your service pages and how those are written. And don't be afraid to play around. If you've got ideas, don't be afraid to play around in ChatGPT. You don't want to be writing this stuff and having AI write everything for you. Really have some time getting good at putting the inputs in there. And again, that's probably for another webinar. I want to keep it pretty clear here because we have limited time, but there's things that you can do to create your own content. And again, if you ever need any help, we can certainly help with that. So thank you. All right. So this is, we're going to bring Brent on here in just a second, but, build local trust online. Google doesn't just want to know what you do. It really wants to know if you're legit. And that means your name, address, and phone number. That needs to be identical across all directories, Yelp, Angie's List, Facebook, etc. And strong local listings, act like backlinks. They give Google confidence that you're, real and relevant. So Brent, if you want to jump on and share your screen and show an example, that would be great. And then we'll come back to our action item.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So as Jonathan mentioned, Google's customers, which is all of us that do searches on the internet, still over 90% of searches are done through Google. So obviously a big player in the search game. That's certainly changing, as Jonathan has talked about. But how do we build trust in Google's eyes? And all of us are probably familiar with the Google Map listing or the Google Business Profile listing that most of our businesses have. Typically, there's name, address, and phone number built into that listing. What you'll see, this is an example of a company in the Twin Cities market. There's upwards of 100 plus listing services above and beyond Google within the Twin Cities market. This is an example of a customer that I built in here, a prospect that I built in here. And they are listed, you can see, in 19 of the 48 listing services in the Twin Cities market as I scroll through here. So 19 of 48, less than 40%. We want to be at 100% in these 48 listing services. In order to do that, there's dozens of pieces of software you can purchase to manage that for you, or you can go through individually and add your listing in these one by one, which would take an enormous amount of time. So we provide a software that allows us to plug the Google Map listing in and then sync that listing up with all of the other listing services. What this does in Google's eyes, it says, okay, this is a trustworthy business that has the same name, address, and phone number, not only on our listing, but on every other listing service. And again, it's one way to build trust in Google's eyes. Another item you will notice here, in address, you'll see that they're listed at 2nd Street East. That is their real address. You'll notice that they're listed at 2nd Street West in a lot of different locations. This allows us to match up the correct listing of 2nd Street East and replace the 2nd Street West, so there's not confusion there. And Google would not rank these folks very high because of the inconsistencies in that address. So listings is one piece of the SEO puzzle that is absolutely paramount to be involved in and to fix. And it's fairly inexpensive and simple to do that. So Jonathan, thanks for allowing me to share that, and I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you. So the action step here is pretty simple. Audit your listings with Bird Eye and update any incorrect information. We're going to share that, as Brent mentioned, we have software. We white label it. It's called Bird Eye. You could certainly use them. They're absolutely fantastic. We use them for our reviews and listings. Just a side note, and again, this is not a sales pitch, but we get a wholesale rate with them. And if people want to use Bird Eye, we could certainly set up a demo for that. And in most cases, if not all, the price using us is a lot lower than going directly to Bird Eye because we have a fair amount of our clients on it. We get a pretty aggressive rate. So any questions on Bird Eye, certainly feel free to reach out. But thank you, Brent, and we'll move on. All right. Content that converts. All right, this is fun for me. High-end content, it doesn't mean a fancy blog. It means useful, specific, and authentic. And I know that word authentic is maybe getting a little bit overused in the marketing industry, but not only does it we have got to write content that resonates with Google, but it has to come from the heart. It's got to educate. It's got to, they don't, you've heard the saying, they don't care until you, I'll just skip that. Anyway, if you get a question on the job, like, how long does it take for epoxy to cure? Answer that question on the website. Maybe keep a little bit of a notebook by you and every time you're having a conversation with a client, if they ask you a question or if you're doing a bid and they ask you a question, start writing those down, and then we can create content, or you can create content on how to answer those questions after the fact. So, the other thing that you can do is, show before and after pictures. Shoot walkthrough videos. We've all got these $1,000 devices on our desk and in our hands at all times. It's a great camera and a great video recorder. Don't be afraid to shoot some videos. And as I mentioned earlier, always aim to educate, not just advertise. And you've seen it and we've seen it. We've got friends and stuff that own businesses, and we've tried to tell them, hey, don't just advertise and try to sell. Um, People don't like that, and they want to be educated. And that's why we're really doing these webinars. We want to educate clients because we feel that the small business owner out there, these home service businesses, really need a ton of help. And so try to think on how you can educate. You're the professional. How can you educate and not just advertise? And that's the type of content that brings in warm leads, and it really builds trust over time. And the action step here is I want you to do this. And if you've not been in video, and again, this is our very first webinar. So thanks for everyone who joined in, because I hope you're enjoying it. But the action step here is record a short video answering a client's recent question. Post it on your Google profile, throw it on Instagram, put it on your website. Our team uses Loom to record and send short videos. So if you haven't checked out Loom, that's another piece of software that we have, Loom. You can check that out when you have time. So moving on. All right, reviews equal revenue. This is a really another important topic. And, let me be blunt here. If you're not asking for reviews after every job, you're leaving money on the table. Reviews drive both your rankings and your close rate. At JBX, we automate this through software called Birdeye, as I mentioned. So we use Birdeye again for the reviews part and the listings part. And they've got a great review product as well. And it's all in one dashboard. But, here's the trick. Send the review request the moment the job is done while the customer is still smiling. You're going to have your Google review request rate or fill rate will be a lot higher. So if you send it out to 10, and you're only getting 2 back now, that's going to jump up quite a bit. But Google reviews is a really, really big piece of that. And so the action step is, if you do want to see a bird eye demo, schedule that with me in the next week or so. We can certainly get you in and show you a demo. All right, here's some really fun stats, and we'll keep this moving along. This is an actual case study for a client of ours, and to protect innocent, I won't name any names here, but it's a landscaping company in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's got multiple locations. And, here's a quick look at how this works in the real world. This client came to us with really an old website, really no web presence at all. In 90 days, we launched a new website. We cleaned up their listings, and we implemented an automated review funnel that we talked about, and that's Birdeye. And the results were absolutely mind-blowing. We really brought more visibility. We brought a lot more phone calls. And as you can see, as we move through this, we brought a lot more jobs. So let's run through the numbers real quick. And again, I'm not a big fan of reading PowerPoints, but there's some numbers on here that I want to jump through real quick. Is the conversion, slide 12. Yeah. So we really built the website from the ground up with the SEO in mind. And again, we won't get into the technicals, but there's things that we do with H1 headers and banner images and things like that. But what I really want to talk about is the SEO strategy that we did. We grew organic traffic from 243%, from 343 monthly visits up to 836. And then we did that through developing great content that we talked about, and it's authentic content. And then we did a lot of keyword research. We really understood, what people were searching for. All right, we also did some paid media in this one. I haven't talked a lot about paid media, but that's where you do some Google ads or Facebook ads. And for this client, we did Facebook ads and Google ads. And then we did some targeting where we went after high income zip codes. And the conversion rate went from 1% to 15%. and the cost per conversion dropped from $81 to just $24. And real quick definition, a conversion rate in this particular company, and there's many different definitions, but in pretty much our world and this customer specifically, a conversion is someone filled out a form fill on their website and it went to the salesperson and they're having communication. The other one is it's a phone call and they've got it. Someone called off of the website, and we've got some tracking software that we use, and the tracking software will let us know exactly how many calls came from that specific number. So we're very data driven here at JBX. So it's great because then we can go back to our client and say, hey, you got this type of ROI on your ad spend and excuse me. And then again, we did the review generation system. I won't talk much more about that because we've talked about Bird Eye enough on this, but we implemented Bird Eye for the reviews and listings. And that's been, for the money, there's probably enough. If I were to do one thing, if I had a very limited marketing budget, it would be to do the reviews and listings and start there and then build up with SEO. And then as you built that up, then I'd probably move into paid ads. And that's really, we did all three with this client. But if I were to do it again, start with the reviews and listings, then start with SEO. And then as your budget increases, as clients increase, then you can go in to do some paid media and do some LSA ads and things like that. But again, without getting too far off the railroad tracks, we'll kind of stick to this. So moving forward. All right. And last but not least, website traffic grew, and these numbers are out of, I think, these just are absolutely fantastic, and our client is super happy. But look at the website traffic. They went from 1,500 visitors over to 5,000, and phone calls increased 333, I can't even, 337%. So 337%, generating over 200 qualified leads. That's 200 qualified leads. Wow. And then in the last half of 2025, we're implementing more photography. We're looking at doing some drone work and really adding video into that. So we've got some professional photography and video folks on staff that we can certainly help you out with that. But you know what, with the quality of the phones today, you can, in the editing software, you guys can certainly grab your phone and do a lot of this stuff yourself. And the action step here is identify your 3 most common jobs and maybe your most profitable cities and build content and reviews around that. So again, going back to, what are your most profitable jobs? Start thinking about your ideal customer profile, and you can start developing content around that. All right. And as we wrap up, and we're coming up on our time limit here, as we wrap up, really what to do next? You really now have the exact playbook we use for our clients at JBX. The difference between more leads and another slow season is really execution. And I would even add, consistency, right? You've got to execute, but you got to be consistent. So here's what I recommend. And it's really pick one thing, whether it's building the FAQ page, fixing your listings or automated reviews, and implement it this week. Or if you want a done for you roadmap, certainly reach out to us. And part of our program is we will, not only are we going to send you that free checklist as our appreciation for you jumping on, we'll set up a free strategy session and we'll audit your SEO and show you exactly what to do next. And there's no obligation to use us whatsoever. But if you want to know where you stack up against your competitors, I always kind of want to know what my competitors are doing, right? So we can show you what your competitors are doing and where you kind of stack rank against them, and we'll show you exactly what to do. So with that being said, that really wraps it up, and that was just about 30 minutes. So I do want to say thank you for spending time with us today. This stuff can really feel overwhelming, but the reality is small, consistent actions lead to big results. And again, I said that a slide earlier, it's not only the execution, but it's the consistency. And so if you're ready to if you're ready to get serious about leads in the third and fourth quarter, we can certainly help you own your market. Reach out and schedule that strategy session. And again, I wanted to say Thank you.